So since we're here to learn about elopement, I have goals. I'm an occupational therapist. We always write goals. And this way, it kind of keeps me on track as well. So one is to essentially have a greater understanding of elopement behaviors and tips for addressing this behavior, to have a greater understanding of elopement strategies for improved safety, because that's our ultimate goal, is to keep people safe. We want them safe in their homes, their schools, their environment. And then to have a greater understanding of available equipment to assist with maintaining this health and safety in their home and community. A lot of times I hear, well, what do I do? What do I use? I don't know where to start. So we're essentially giving you a place to start. And then you can mix and match it and make it more individual for that client, that kiddo, that adult, to find what's going to be the best, essentially, cocktail for them to help with this behavior. So, a little research time. 49% of kiddos with an autism diagnosis engage in elopement. So that's a lot. Now we have such an increase in diagnosis of autism. I mean, you can imagine that this is just going to become more of a problem in schools, community centers, at home, cities, even rural communities. So this is something that we should probably be addressing in all areas. A little bit more research for you. I won't go through every single slide, but I'll kind of hit on the important parts. So this is all from a very good source. This is the National Autism Association. They go through and they do a lot of research. They try to help educate and advocate for their families. And this is some of the things that they've actually found when looking at elopement. Elopement is one of those behaviors that is not necessarily researched a lot. They don't know why this behavior occurs. There's thoughts, there's suggestions, there's ways that we kind of feel that this behavior can be attributed to, but it's still something that people are really trying to get a good understanding of. Essentially, we kind of look at this, and I have families tell me that things that they deal with is lack of sleep, fear of going out in public, fear of their kids getting out and drowning, being hit by cars, being taken away, or having issues if they run into first responders and if they're not verbal, being able to essentially be able to communicate their needs and their wants to be able to be found safely or to be returned to their families. So a lot of times parents will tell me the hardest thing is their anxiety, their loss of sleep, their inability to have the confidence that they can take their children out in the community or leave them at school or leave them in a day program, and they know that their kid's going to be safe, whether they're a little kid or whether an adult. So there are things that can be put in place. There are strategies that you can do to help implement to maintain safety. Things happen, but my motto is, be prepared. I'm like a Boy Scout. The more prepared you are, the better advocate you are going to be for your loved one or for your client or your consumer or your patient. A couple other little things for you. This is good if you're a case manager, a teacher, or a family member. These are just really good things to kind of be able to tell doctors, be able to tell teachers, be able to advocate within an IEP or an ISP meeting, be able to explain to family members, to grandparents, to neighbors, just some suggestions that you can talk to them about. That kiddos usually this behavior will amplify between 7 and 10. So a lot of times families will be like, my child's 3, they're starting to figure out doors, they're bolting out the front door. You can say, okay, well, this is when we want to start really kind of getting in there, start looking at the different locks and alarms, ways that we can hopefully kind of curb or redirect that behavior. And then hopefully by the time they're about 7 and 10, we have a good at least handle on what we can do to help, again, kind of curb that behavior and at least maintain their safety. And then if that behavior exacerbates at that time frame, these are some other options that we can do that we can implement into their home and into their community to make sure that they're maintaining that safety. Essentially like an action plan. Start here, then we move here. And that's how we keep them safe, and that's how you can sleep at night knowing that you have a plan in place to be able to keep these kids safe. Most families will tell me that they haven't had a lot of guidance in with elopement behaviors. I'll have families tell me that their pediatrician doesn't quite understand it, that sometimes the day program or their school, they might not see that behavior because of the type of environment that they are in. A lot of times neighbors won't understand why my child's getting out, or why my child's trying to walk into a neighbor's home, or trying to get into a car, I have a family that I work with where her biggest concern is he will get out of the house and open as many car doors as he can to try to get into a car to be able to take off in that car. And that's a huge fear that she has because she lives in a very high populated area and her neighbors don't quite understand why this is happening. They assume that he's just trying to break into a car. So that's another thing that I have a lot of families will tell me that they have a fear about, that there's just a lack of understanding kind of across the board in the community with this type of behavior. So why is it so hard to treat? So the thing about elopement, it's with any behavior, there's limited research. A lot of times it is goal-oriented and it serves a purpose or a function. Scott was telling me about a story with his son where it's a game. I have some folks, I was working with an individual on Tuesday who's in a day program, and he elopes from his day program on a regular basis because he's ready to transition and they may not be ready for him to transition yet. And so it's a response to him not being able to move on to the next activity. Or I've had people tell me that it could be a fear response, a new environment response. It could just be, I'm super interested in what's over there, and so I don't really want to wait, and so I'm gonna head that way. So trying to figure out what that causes or why they want to elope is a really good place to start. Things that you can do, talking about starting. Number one would be securing your vehicle, making sure that your vehicle is locked, that you have appropriate car seats, you have appropriate equipment in there to help kind of secure them in their seat. Securing your home, making sure you have locks, alarms, even a camera system in some cases. Consider different safety equipment that's out on the market. Teaching your child to swim, that is a huge, huge thing. 91% of kiddos who have a history of elopement, they will essentially, their injury is drowning. They get into water, they don't know how to swim, they head towards a water source. And that is a huge fear for parents, especially in Missouri. We have a lot of rivers, we have a lot of creeks, we have a lot of lakes, we flood a lot. So that is something that we would really try to, and I talk to my parents about, get them into a program. The YMCA has programs to help teach swimming. Here in St. Louis, Keene Sports has a pool in St. Charles that they use, and one in Clayton that they'll use to help with getting more comfortable in the water, being aware of the rules around water, just to make sure that that kiddo feels safe and that the parents know that they're safe around water. And alerting neighbors and first responders to what is going on. Being honest. I always joke that it takes a village to raise a child. Usually I tell people I'm part of that village. My parents had to have a very large village to raise me, so I always encourage my families to make sure you befriend your neighbors. Let them know what's going on. This is something that we're dealing with, and they're surprised at the positive reaction that a lot of parents will get. Yeah, I'm on your side. Let's do this. Let's keep your kids safe. So alerting your neighbors and first responders to this is a huge piece. You're not an island. That's what I tell my families. You're not an island. There's a lot of people going through similar things as well. So let's have a nice support system in your community. So tips for elopement prevention. When I go out to do an assessment, when I go out to meet families, when I go out to meet clients, consumers, patients, I always want to look at their environment, whether it be their home, whether it be their school, whether it be their day program, and I want to gather as much information as I can. I want to develop a hypothesis, kind of why this behavior is happening. I ask teachers, I ask family members, I ask their day program workers, what's a typical day like? What are things that may happen prior to? Is it mostly in the morning? Is it in the evening? Is it when they're being dropped off? Like, what is the scenario where you notice the elopement behavior the most? And that allows us to be able to gather that information so then we can try to redirect that behavior or put things in place, visual schedules, have somebody meet them at the door, maybe use a piece of equipment or have some sort of like GPS locator if they're very fast. I don't run, so if I have someone who elopes on me, I'm going to need an oxygen tank and a respiratory therapist, and I'm going to have to call 911 because I don't run. So having something like a GPS locator that can go into your smartphone is a very good way to be able to track in real time where the kiddo is going. Or if you want to take your kiddo out for a day at Grant's Farm or the zoo, and you have that fear, that anxiety that they are going to elope, that's another safety thing that you can put in place just to make the event and the community outing a little bit more enjoyable. I will keep notes. You can make a table, you can make a list, you can have the caregivers or the family members keep a journal or a tally mark of when it happens. A lot of times I'll tell them print out a calendar, a 30-day calendar. Write down behaviors that you're seeing, and you'll start to notice a trend. And once that trend becomes apparent, then that is how you essentially kind of address that behavior. You see that trend, you figure out what's going on. When that trend's happening, you can figure out what is the cause of this behavior, and then ways to kind of implement different interventions and to help with that behavior. Again, tips for elopement prevention: securing your vehicle. Things that you can do that don't require equipment, that are just good, solid tips for anybody from any age on, is consistent use of a behavior plan to include establishing consistent rules of riding in the car, use a picture to demonstrate the correct way to be buckled in. I have families that will tell me that they don't like to be in a traditional seat belt, that could cause a problem, or that could cause them to start to feel claustrophobic or have increased behaviors, or they want to take off their seatbelts, which is a safety issue. So thinking about maybe a different way to secure them in the vehicle with a different type of car seat or a different type of harness seatbelt is a good way to see if that helps make the kiddo or the adult feel a little bit more comfortable, which may decrease some of those behaviors. Praising and rewarding, be consistent, set boundaries and discipline. Let them know. One of the things that I've learned as an OT is a lot of times people with sensory processing difficulties or just people in general, we need boundaries to be able to know kind of where to start, where to end, what's the expectation. And it's the same thing with kiddos with an autism diagnosis. You want to make sure that you set those boundaries and let them know this is not okay, this is a safety thing, this is something that we don't do because this could lead to injury. Be honest with your child or your patient and your consumer. So tips for securing your home: installing equipment for doors and windows such as alarms or locks. Consider a fence for your yard if that's something that is available in your area. Some homes here in St. Louis and St. Charles are in a historic area, so they are not allowed to put fences in. So then there's always ways to kind of think about around that problem. Okay, what can we do if we can't put a fence in? Let's think this through. Make a more individual plan. Installing safety cameras inside and outside your home is another thing that a lot of families really like. As parents, and I have 2 kids of my own, we can't be everywhere at all times. My mom used to tell me she has eyes in the back of her head. When I became a parent, I realized you don't. A lot of times you're guessing on what they're doing. So by installing that security camera for their bedroom or for the basement or for outdoors, it's just another level of security, another level of just feeling, okay, I'm doing everything possible to keep my child safe. Alerting your neighbors, we kind of talked a little bit about that, but let them know a little background. Are they afraid of animals? Does your neighbor have a big dog? I have a little girl in St. Charles who mom is very afraid that she's going to get out of the house and her neighbor has 2 very large dogs and her child is very small. So talking to your neighbors about that, letting them meet the animal so they become familiar with the animal. Do they gravitate towards water? Do you have a pool? Does your neighbor have a pool? Those would be the people that I would want to go and say, hey, listen, I have a child who we're dealing with elopement. We're trying to maintain safety. I see that you have a pool. If you see my child around your home and I'm not there, please call me. We really want to maintain his safety. you know, your pool is awesome, we love it, please let us use it. But if you see my child without one of myself or my husband or a caregiver, please let us know, because that's not right. There's something wrong. So that's just another thing to just establish that relationship with your neighbors. Do they respond to their name? Are they verbal? Are they nonverbal? Will they listen to you? If you approach them, will they respond to you, or will they get scared? Will they act out? I have a 28-year-old young man who lives in the city who has a hard time with elopement, and he has a very hard time with people approaching him. So we had to go to the neighbors, talk to the neighbors about, if you see him out, these are the steps that you need to take to maintain your safety, maintain his safety, make sure that everybody's okay. Because you have a lot of people who want to help, they just don't know the right way. So give them the instructions so that if they see your child or an adult out in the community, they can approach in the correct way, to make sure that it's smooth and nothing escalates. And then, are there sensory triggers? Loud noises, or weather, or time of year. Is anything that you see more of these behaviors happening? I back up to a park, July 4th. There's always fireworks. That is a hard time for anybody. So, you know, thinking about that stuff, like what happens at the time of the year, what does your neighborhood do? Is there something that happens that could be overwhelming for somebody who's dealing with sensory processing difficulties? Those are things that you want to take into consideration when you're talking to your neighbors, talking to first responders, or just setting your plan for an elopement plan for your home. And then again, ask them to call you immediately if they see your child or adult outside. First responders. So we'll get a little bit into this farther on in the presentation, but there is a program called Smart 911 that it's nationwide. You can call them, they can set a profile for your home and for anybody living in that home. So if there's an emergency called, they can be aware of what's going on. Hey, there's a kiddo that lives here who has an autism diagnosis, they're nonverbal, there is a history of elopement, there are things in the home such as locks, a keyless entry, or an alarm system that is something that the first responders could find as a barrier, or just to be aware of if they're going to this home for an emergency call. It's a very important thing. In St. Louis City, St. Louis County, and St. Charles County, they have registries for the police department and for the fire stations, so you can make sure that everybody is on the same safety plan in case there's an emergency at that home. In your packets in your folders, we have created different emergency plans for families, for first responders, things to give babysitters, things to give respite care workers, things to give therapists, in-home therapists, whoever needs this information. It gives them all of the pertinent information that you would need in case of an emergency, to keep everybody safe. And please copy them, pass them out, give them to as many people as you want, because our whole goal with this is just to increase the safety in this area, in this community. This is a list of really good community resources. Autism Speaks, Aware Collaboration. This is mostly focused on elopement. They have a grant called the Big Red Safety Box. It is a grant that you can sign up for. It is a grant cycle, so it can only take a limited amount of participants, but it will send out to families elopement strategies, stop sign decals, information to keep them safe, or post in their home or their car to help with deterring that elopement behavior. It's a really, really good resource for the community. And then the Autism Safety Toolkit. So here's all the different links. Everybody who has, everybody on here, all are doing it for the same reason, just to spread the word, get the community involved, and increase the safety for the kids and the adults who are essentially dealing with this, with elopement, and the families who are dealing with elopement, because it does increase anxiety. It's a huge stressor. It limits their participation in the community, which we don't want that. We want them out. We want them enjoying life and experiencing the world, because it's better for everybody. Another really good way to kind of educate and help kind of close that circle is social stories. So this is a good website. This is a teachers paid teachers. These are all teachers who create different handouts and social stories different ways to educate children on anything. This is one that I found on Elopement. It's not okay to run. It's a social story that talks about why you should not run, who you should listen to, and essentially kind of help be able to teach in a different way that maybe your child or the adult can understand a little bit better than just reprimanding or telling or whatever we choose to go to. If we're in that position where this just happened to me, I'm very upset about this, like we need to work this. This is a way to calmly talk with the child or the caregiver to make sure that the word is being spread and the child understands, the adult understands that this is not an okay behavior, setting those boundaries. So the next part of the talk is about equipment. So the first part, I like to swim. I think water is an amazing. I think it's a very good healing environment. I think that it's good for social interaction. I think it's good for strength and endurance. It has a lot of really excellent things excellent interventions for everybody, whether you have a diagnosis, whether you're typically developing, whether you're old, young, whatever. There are some different products. This is Danmar water safety products. And we have some over here, and I'll pull them up. These are different flotation devices that are used to help teach swimming. So if you have a child or an adult that maybe they have a physical disability or they have strength, endurance, or fear of the water. These are different ways that you can essentially kind of grade them up in the activity. Start them with a lot of equipment, and then gradually over time as they get more comfortable, you take the equipment away. It also will help with developing those skills like keeping their head above water, being able to take strokes, be able to get to the side of the pool, being able to actually swim across the pool. The first one here is just a life vest that you would see. It's very nice. I can pass it around if you guys want to see it. Essentially, this is not a life preserver. It's essentially a flotation device to help with teaching swimming skills. The next one is the Tri-Swim. Again, it is a flotation device that helps to teach swimming skills, but it's not as encompassing as the flotation device. This is for our kiddo who is ready for the next step, who needs to start engaging their arms, engaging their legs, who doesn't need to necessarily rely on that flotation device anymore, but still needs just a little help to maintain them up and out of the water, not have their head go underneath, just to kind of help with that fear and being able to trust the water. This is my favorite. I love this. This is what I actually use for my children to learn how to swim. It's a comfort mat. This will go right underneath the surface of the water. It just breaks that surface tension, but it doesn't go any farther. So you can lay your child on top of it, and they can get the feel of the water. They can understand how you lay in the water to be able to actually swim freestyle or whatever stroke they feel most comfortable with. So it's a really great product that you can use in swim lessons. You can use for fun. You can use for just being more comfortable in the water and kind of working them from sometimes you have children who are afraid of the water, won't even get in it, won't get near it, and you slowly start to get them to the side, slowly start to get them in, and then this will allow you to get them on the mat and take them farther away from the side where they still feel secure, they still feel supported, but it allows them to move through that fear and be able to move into the next part of swimming. Mm-hmm. Yep, you can use them across the board. I've been a therapist for 12 years. My mother's a physical therapist. She's been a physical therapist for a lot of years. She would be mad at me if I told you how many. But she was an aquatic therapist for about 20 years. She used a lot of different water techniques. There's Bodrigas, there's Watsu. There's ways of helping to relax children and adults in the water. And a lot of this equipment is stuff that you would see in aquatic therapy. Ways to help maintain that float, maintain the support of the client, maintain the therapist being able to move through the water, supporting the client and being able to do the different techniques to help facilitate the therapeutic aspect of the water, or teaching swimming. So these are products that can translate across ages. So just good products.
Okay. Thanks, Emily.
No problem.
Okay. So I'm Scott, in case I didn't get introduced earlier. Sorry about that. So I'm just going to touch on a few more products that Emily's been so gracious to run through so far. So we've covered a little bit of water safety. So now we're going to move on to more fun topics like vehicle safety. So, and I'll use some my own personal examples and experiences with this as well. So with car safety, there's really a different graduated levels of security for the vehicle. The first and simplest thing in a vehicle would be the door locks on the side. So if child's sitting in the back seat, you're most likely going to turn on that safety latch so they can't open the door while the vehicle's in movement. So I do that with my son. So that's just good, makes perfect sense. So you're not driving down the highway and all of a sudden the door flies open. So the next level after that is they typically will do what? Take off their seatbelt, and then what do? They run around the car, they hit their sibling, they grab stuff, or if there's a behavioral issue, they come into the front seat, they may pull hair, they may kick, anything like that. So what we want to do is try and keep them in the seat so it's not a safety hazard for them and also for the driver plus everyone else in the vehicle. So the first instance would be a very simple mechanism, which is a seatbelt buckle guard. So this is one particular model we have, and what it does is it doesn't interfere with the actual seatbelt at all. What it does is actually just prevents the user from unlocking the seatbelt itself. So it locks just like it normally does, but they can't really get their finger in to dislocate or disconnect the latch. So the way it's usually done is you take a car key and you just press through there for the red button. And it's a very simple item, but what's really great about it is once they realize that they can't get out, they'll try for a little bit to try and, at least with my son, he'll try and for a little while to try and get out of it, and then he moves his attention onto something else. So maybe it's listening to music or reading a book or something else in the vehicle. But the whole point of trying to elope out of the car seat kind of moves away. So that's one instance. The next level for anyone who, the next level for kiddos who have more of an elopement risk in the vehicle and they can somehow maybe slide out from underneath the seatbelt or something like that, then we graduate up to what's called a safety vest. A safety vest, you've probably seen these on school buses or even you may even own some. The idea is, and I will demonstrate this with Henry here, and it will zip up in the back. And typically, the process of this is, let's say you're wanting to go out somewhere, the child's going to school. This can very easily be put on the child in your home, and then once it's on, you can walk back to the vehicle or onto the school bus. And then let's say you get into the vehicle, the actual tether will just connect on here. And then once it's secured in place, then you just end up tightening it up. And what that does is it prevents the individual from leaning and lunging forward because it pulls their shoulders against the back of the seat. And then you'll also incorporate the seat belt to go through the loops in the bottom, which locks their hips in place as well. So that way they're locked into the shoulders and at the hips, which prevents them from kind of sliding out from underneath the seat or getting loose in the vehicle as well. So with a seat belt, they could still kind of lean over and move around. With this type of harness on, they're going to be more secured in place. And again, if there is ever an accident, they're going to be locked in there so they can't lunge or fall forward. And there's different variations on this as well.
Height and weight restrictions?
Height and weight restrictions, good question. So on the adjustable vest, it actually is adjustable with 3 zippers. So typically measurements, chest circumference, waist circumference, will go with the bigger of the 2. And then typically if we size it correctly, just to allow for growth, then we'll hopefully be able to get it into the smallest position or closer to it. And then if they're wearing a coat or if they're not wearing a coat, this can maybe expand out based on the weather outside. So the typical sizes will go up to about, I'm trying to think, I think maybe I can wear the large. Anything bigger than that, then we can go in and start getting a custom modified one. And there's really not much to it. It's a matter of getting chest circumference, waist circumference, and then shoulder to hips. And then the manufacturer just simply will manufacture it to that size. And then once we do it that way, then we'll again still allow for the variations for growth. So if the individual continues to grow, then you can still adjust it accordingly. So it makes it really handy, and it's a big lifesaver for families who just have issues with the individual kind of getting loose in the vehicle or causing distractions. That actually happened with my son when he was about 14. He decided to take off his seatbelt, and fortunately he was in a good mood, but my wife turned around long enough to try and get him to put a seatbelt on, and that's right when the car in front of her put their brakes on. So, poof. So no one was hurt, but I mean, again, that's just an example. It could have been a lot worse. So, and it's just because he was jumping on the back seat. So that's the Easy On vest. And there are different variations of it. There's buttons in the front, there's zippers in the back. Most of the times, I'd recommend doing the zippers in the back because then they cannot release it at all. Okay. So after that, we graduate up to booster seats. Booster seats are designed to provide a little more support and hold them in a little more securely. The biggest difference you'll see with a booster seat style is it's going to provide more trunk support, so it has more of a vest that will wrap around and provide some lateral support for individuals that might be a little more floppy. And it also has a pelvic strap, which goes between the legs. And what that does is for any individual that kind of gets that posterior pelvic tilt as they try and slide down and out, this actually draws their bottom against the back of the seat, so they actually can't do that. So it's in a lot of seating systems, a lot of wheelchairs, but now you see it now coming out with a lot of booster seats as well. And it's very, very effective in keeping them positioned in the seat properly. And these will accommodate users up to 6'2". So, and then there's really not a weight restriction on these type of products. And then the next level would be a full car seat. So car seats, there's a host of those on the market, depending on the type of support that's needed. This is one model, which is like a Roosevelt model, and this one is designed to fit users up to about 66, 67 inches tall. And it can come with either different types of head supports, lateral supports, a heads-up option if the kiddo just doesn't have good head support and their head may flex forward. There is an option for a cap that will help with that. And we even have models that will go up to have actual true swing weight lateral and hip supports as well for individuals that are just a lot more just low tone. So again, it's all about having that safety while they're in the vehicle, elopement or non-elopement, just so they're secured in place. So going to the home safety type issues. So I'll touch on a few areas as far as window alarms, window locks, door locks, and then videos as well. And it's really about coming up with kind of a 360 degree plan on how to keep the child or individual safe in the home. So usually one item might work, but a lot of times you have to implement a few different strategies to make this work better. So windows is a good place to start. So windows, you've probably seen a lot of alarms on the market. This is one style that uses a magnetic little mechanism on it. The one thing I find with a lot of individuals are a lot of the alarms have that little on and off switch. So it's off, chime, and alarm. Well, most of the clients I've worked with, they know how to turn that on and off. So it's pretty simple to do. So the new ones that are out now, they don't really have that so easily accessible, or it's possibly just tied in with a Wi-Fi connection and a cube, which ties into your internet connection at home. And what that does is actually, if they decide to open the window, there's no way to turn it off here, and there's no alarm here either. But what it does is it sets off an alarm somewhere else in the house, and then it may also notify you on your phone or smart device that this specific window in Nicholas's room is open, and now you know where to go to see what's going on. But what happens is, in some cases, is with the alarms that have the on and off switch, there's that cause and effect that kicks in. They know if they open it, that it's going to set on an alarm. So they're going to try to find another way to maneuver around it. That's what my son used to do, and he figured it out. Actually, I think he took the batteries out. Yeah, that's what he did. But if he didn't hear the alarm go off, then he's just like, oh, okay, I've got the window open. Then all of a sudden, whoosh, we come upstairs. Or he hears us scream his name. So window alarms, a lot of different types on the market, very simple to more complex. It will tie into Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. With smart devices, it's made security so much easier, so much better. So it's wonderful what's coming out. Door locks, we'll start with more deadbolt styles. So one thing that we run into a lot of families are going out the front door or going through into the garage or going out the back sliding door. So there are some simple deadbolt style mechanisms that can go onto doors, either sliding or swing, and it requires a multi-steps to actually open it. So you just don't slide a barrel bolt open. You actually have to pull it down on a spring, and then it has to flip open. And it's really worked for slowing down a lot of kiddos. So what it does is you incorporate this with an alarm on the door as well. And if anything, it buys you more time. If they are really desperate or they really want to get out of the house, sometimes they can just do it. They're going to find a way to do it. But the goal is to either prevent it as much as you can or slow them down enough so you can work on trying to change the behavior. So the door guardian will work on a swing door. The patio guardian is designed more for a sliding door application where, again, multi-steps to pull this pin down so the sliding door will open or not open. Deadbolts that are out on the market. So one thing I'm going to just point out, just so families are aware. So what a lot of people will do is you have a thumb turn on the inside of your house, and you turn that to open your front door or your garage door. So what a lot of families will do is they will take off the thumb turn, and they will put a key deadbolt on the inside. That way, you just take the key out of the door when you don't want them to get it in and out. And it does work, but the problem with that is a serious life safety issue, because if you put a keyed deadbolt on the inside of the house and you're out, but let's say you've got a babysitter or caregiver in the house and something happens like a fire, if they can't find that key, then guess what? There's going to be a death or a serious injury. So keying it, and if you actually ask a locksmith to do that, they won't do it for you either. It just violates all sort of life safety and fire code issues. So the issue now is, what do you do? So what you see here as far as examples, these are all designed for exterior of the door. All these lock sets will still have the thumb turn on the inside. Even like more of the keyed locks as well, those are designed for the outside. What you can do is put those on the pantries, basement doors, closets to prevent them from getting into a certain room or door. But as far as putting it on the inside of the door, that's where you're going to run into an issue. So you're going to have to either look at doing an alarm or the deadbolt like I showed you previously. And as much as I know that will slow down using the key on the inside, there's too much risk involved, and it just takes one time just for it to be a nightmare. So just definitely you don't want to have any issues with that. Video surveillance. Okay, so it's helpful to know what's going on in your home, whether you're at home or if you're not at home. So with the cameras that are available in the market now, in the past you always had to have all this cable running through your house, or you had to have an outlet put it right near somewhere where the camera is going to be in order for these to connect and be powered on. So the nice thing about having the cameras in the rooms, though, is if you put one in a bedroom, if you put one in a kitchen, then you can be in a different part of the house, you can be out somewhere or be in the front yard, and if there's a motion detection built into it and it picks up that there's motion, then you can get an alert, again, on your device to showing that something's going on, or you can get a grid view of all the rooms in the house, and you can kind of see what your child is doing at that particular time and kind of make sure they're not getting into trouble. The new camera marks that are out there now run on rechargeable batteries. So the days of all the cables running through your house are gone. So the wireless units will actually have a rechargeable battery you can take out, charge it up, and it usually just comes on now when there's motion or movement in the room. and then that's when the battery is starting to be engaged with the camera. As soon as there's no activity in the room, then the camera goes off and it saves power on the battery. And the batteries typically will charge up after a few hours anyway. So they don't use as much power as they used to. And you can tie that into your Wi-Fi in your home, which will allow you to tie it into your camera, iPad, tablet, whatever you have, computer, and then just visually monitor this anywhere, anytime. The other thing I will point out too is with a lot of kiddos that I work with autism, it's not also just an elopement issue. It also has to do with unauthorized personnel coming into the home. So I've had issues where an individual might go and answer the door, and there might be, for a UPS person come and deliver a package, but they'll just open the door and greet them friendly, not knowing otherwise, and then there's unauthorized entries into the home. So it also allows you to kind of watch and see what's going on there as well, and either record it on a DVR so you have it available, or just use it as strictly as a monitoring system. The other thing that's available or coming available now is, if you guys are familiar with like the Alexa type products from Amazon, well, the new products that are out also integrate a screen on the unit, which is the Alexa Show. And those also integrate with camera systems, which allow you to easily monitor from that base, and you can give more commands to the cameras to turn and tilt and change angles if you get that type of camera system. So again, the technology coming forth, and as it keeps getting developed on a daily basis, is very helpful for security going into people's homes. And then DVRs, which are available with and without rechargeable batteries. So, and then the GPS locators, as Emily talked further about. So if your child does get out of the house, then it becomes an issue as far as, okay, now you have to track them and figure out, did they take off, where are they going, are they nearby, did they run really far away? So there are a host of different tracking systems on the market. Most of the time, you're going to be looking at some sort of a GPS type system. What that means is you have the initial product, and then you have some sort of subscription that will cover you on a monthly basis, that will tie into your smartphone or a tablet or your computer. So if someone does get away, then you can actually track them in real time, or have it maybe updated every minute or 2 minutes on your device to see where they're at. So it'll give you an idea of what's on the market. And one issue I hear more than anything is the ones that have been out there before are typically like a watch, which will go into the individual's wrist. And the problem is the child may not like having this item on their wrist. Okay, they can feel it, and as soon as they see it, they don't want it, they're going to try and tear it off, and then you don't have the tracking available. So the new ones that are coming out are getting a little more clever. So there's items like the Trax System, which is a small little box. And what it does is actually it gets sewn somewhere into the clothing, like a little pocket, so that they can't easily find it. And again, it will track in real time. Another device that's become very popular is the Sole, or GPS Sole. And this is actually basically a phone in an inner sole that goes into the individual's shoe. And most of the time, once you put that in, most of the time they don't take their shoes off, or at least they're not going to take the inner sole out of their shoe. So this will work just like a phone inside the shoe, and then you can track them in real time if they start running around. And we've tried it in our office, we've tried it with people driving around, and it works very well. So this is probably one of the more effective ways to kind of track an individual and not worry about them taking the device off of them. And then there's different devices like the Angel Sense, which again is another type of small device which can go onto the individual into a small pocket. They also have a product coming out soon that will be a belt that they'll wear. And so the GPS will be built directly into the belt. So that should hopefully be out in the next few months. And then we have more like the Locate Freedom devices, which are more the watch type applications as well. So, but the ones that tie into GPS really are probably more effective. There's other systems on the market that use more like sonar type to kind of track an individual, but they just don't do well outside or with very far range, whereas with a GPS, it's going to track pretty much anywhere. Okay. Temporary tattoos. This is just a kind of a low-tech type device. just for like a bracelet with medical information on it. So the tattoos can be bought in large packs, and then you can put information on them and tattoo it on their arm. So if they do get away and get outside the house, outside of the community, or outside into the front yard, someone finds them, at least then they may be able to see that the tattoo's on their arm. They may see that they're autistic, and then here's some contact information. And then those can just be, those will stay on for, what, a few days, Emily? And then once that's done, you just put a new one on. But then it just provides enough information to let the individual knows who finds them that this is someone I need to call on and help get them back home.
So a couple of just community products that are just good for you to know. There's Project Lifesaver. Have any of you heard of Project Lifesaver? So this is a nationwide program. The information is down at the bottom of the screen with the phone number, but essentially it is administered by public safety agencies. It could be a fire department, volunteer fire department, it could be a police. In St. Charles, they have something similar called CareTrack, which is monitored through the police. And it's a way to help find adults and children who wander. So Project Lifesaver is a really nice organization. They have a great website that has a lot of information on there for elopement strategies as well, and just another thing out there in the community to help keep people safe. And then Smart 911, which I had touched about earlier. Again, the website's down at the bottom. This is another really great thing. And for anybody who has an IEP or an ISP, or you meet new families who are struggling with this, would be one of the first things that I tell them when I do an evaluation. If I come into their home, hey, let's keep them safe. This is something that you can do. You can call the police department. They're just registry. They can know what's going on in your home and be able to keep you safe if there's an emergency. Because if there's an emergency situation, you're not thinking about all that stuff. You're thinking about what's right in front of you. So again, going back to my Boy Scout reference, be prepared. The more prepared you are, the better you're going to be when something happens. And then we, in response to meeting a lot of the families and working with a lot of the individuals in the community, have created different kits to make it easier for families. A lot of times families don't have the time to be able to kind of do the research, go and try to find these different products. So we made it easy for you. We made it easy for them just to be able to go on there. Everything's kind of put together. There's education involved with each one of the kits that will help maintain their safety. It will kind of guide them through, provide them with those tips, provide them with the information that they need to fill out in case of an emergency. And it has a lot of the equipment that we've kind of touched upon. The elopement kit, the one thing that we didn't talk about, it does have a medical ID bracelet that they can have engraved with their name, if they're nonverbal, with their contact information. So that's another way that they can maintain their safety too if they get out of the home. And then the home safety kit, which again, things that we talked about, the different alarms, the different locks. There's cabinet locks, patio locks, refrigerator locks, just everything that you would need as almost like a foundation starter kit to maintain the safety in your home. If anybody wants any of the references for the education provided today, they are on the back of your handout. If there's any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them for you. We tried to be as prepared as we possibly could today and provided a lot of education in your folders. But if you ever have questions, problems, or concerns, you can call up here anytime. Everybody on our staff is very well educated on all these different products, tips, and strategies. You can email us, you can call us, you can stop by, whatever you need to do, we'd be more than happy to help. And that is the end of our presentation. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate your time.